Emma started unpacking her suitcase, feeling a mix of anticipation and curiosity as she awaited her husband, Derek. He'd surprised her with a last-minute cruise to the Caribbean, a thoughtful gesture to rekindle their relationship. Just last night, he'd told her about the trip, leaving her with only one task: to pack her bags. Derek had gone out of his way to clear his work schedule and inform their families about the getaway. The only thing Emma hadn't had time to handle was calling Mike, her lover. The thought brought a hint of relief. Soon, all the sneaking and deception would end. Her brief affair with Mike was over. She'd known it was time to let go, especially since she and Derek had talked about starting a family soon. A part of her was grateful for this fleeting affair, a moment to feel attractive and wanted by someone new before settling into motherhood. It had been a one-time adventure, just to reassure herself that others found her appealing. Reflecting on it, Emma couldn't quite remember why she had wanted to see Mike so badly at first. He was charming and handsome, and initially, the thrill had been intoxicating. But over time, the spark faded, and she realized it was nothing close to love. She'd come to believe that if there wasn't genuine affection, it couldn't justify having a lover. Now, looking back, she could admit it had all been shallow infatuation. The thrill had been enjoyable, but it wasn't worth risking her marriage for. Thankfully, she and Mike had been cautious. Neither Derek nor Mike's wife, Sarah, had any idea about their affair. It was better to end things now and not tempt fate any further. Emma hoped Derek had been truthful about wanting children after the cruise. Becoming a mother was one of her dreams and a major reason she'd married him, though not the only one. She could already envision a nursery, decorated in shades of blue or pink, depending on the child. Her heart swelled with joy at the thought that the best chapter of her life was about to begin. Just then, she heard the click of a key in the lock. Her pulse quickened. She'd imagined welcoming Derek with a warm hug and an affectionate kiss. But as the door swung open, she let out a startled gasp. "Mike! What are you doing here?" she stammered, alarmed. "You can't be here. Derek will arrive any minute. Please, leave." Mike's face mirrored her shock. "Emma, what on earth are you doing here? Sarah told me she'd be meeting me here shortly. This is supposed to be our cabin." Neither of them moved, each grappling with the awkwardness of the moment. After a few tense seconds, Mike's face cleared as he slapped his forehead. "Wait. I get it now. This must be our cabin. Yours and mine." Emma blinked, incredulous. "What are you talking about?" "Think about it," he said, a grim smile forming. "They found out. Somehow, your husband and my wife discovered everything. And it looks like they arranged for us to be on this cruise together. Maybe as some kind of twisted farewell gift for our marriages." "No, that doesn't make sense," Emma protested, shaking her head. "Derek told me he arranged this trip and that he'd meet me a bit later because of a work issue. He said this was meant to bring us closer and prepare us for starting a family." "Sarah told me almost the exact same thing," Mike replied, his voice tinged with frustration. And now that I think about it, something in her tone was odd. Like she was trying not to laugh. "I think they've set us up, Emma." Emma hesitated, trying to process his words. "Are you sure? What if they actually show up? Take a look at your ticket." He handed over his own, and she scanned them side by side. After a moment, he sighed. "Look, the booking has us sharing the same cabin. I'm calling Derek. This has to be some kind of mistake." Emma dialed Derek's number, but nothing happened. Her second attempt had the same result. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath. "The phone company must still be updating the network. That's why I couldn't reach you last night." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Who told you the phones wouldn't work?" "Derek. And guess what? Sarah told me last night that our phones might not work on the cruise because they disconnected us from the plan. They knew we'd try to call each other." "No way." This can't be happening, Emma whispered, panic starting to settle in. I plan to end our affair after this cruise. I need my husband, my marriage. I want to have children, Derek's children. We need to get off this ship right now. It's already too late, Mike replied, his tone grim. The ship has left the dock. We're here for at least a couple of days until the first port. Then I'll get off and catch a flight home. I'll beg Sarah not to do anything drastic. Emma's eyes darted nervously. How will you even get home? I'll catch a return flight. And you'll pay for it, how? With my credit card, obviously. Emma bit her lip, realizing her oversight. Do you think our cards will still work? Let's find out. Mike gestured toward the purser's desk. Let's see if we can withdraw anything from our accounts. Their suspicions were quickly confirmed at the purser's desk, both their credit cards had been declined. The purser allowed them to use the internet, where they discovered that half of their joint accounts had been drained, and their ATM cards cancelled. Any attempt to call their spouses resulted in the same response: this number is no longer in service. So, Emma, how much cash are you carrying? Mike asked, his tone sardonic. About $300. You? Roughly $250. Guess that rules out any fancy excursions. Emma's shoulders slumped as the reality hit her. Looks like we're stuck here for the entire cruise. I assume you have a return ticket? Yeah, but still. What am I supposed to do now? This is going to be the worst week of my life. How could I have been so careless? Mike gave a half-smile, trying to lighten the mood. Well, we can still make the most of the cruise. Who knows what's in store? I'd rather just sit in the cabin and think about how to win Derek back. All right, he replied with a shrug. I'll unpack and see what free activities they've got around here. Emma hesitated, then spoke up. You don't actually think we'll stay in the same cabin, do you? Emma, we've been seeing each other for months, all under the illusion that our spouses knew nothing. Now that they do, what difference does it make if we share a cabin? Maybe Derek will be more forgiving if I tell him we didn't share a cabin during the cruise, she replied, clinging to a fragile hope. Mike chuckled, shaking his head. You're delusional. Good luck with that story. In the end, Emma and Mike ended up sharing the cabin, and a bed, for the remainder of the cruise. Emma agreed to let Mike sleep beside her on the nights he stayed, but they kept a strict distance. Meanwhile, Mike found himself welcomed into the cabin of another passenger for a couple of nights. Emma spent her days in the cabin, eating, sleeping, crying, and rehearsing the apology she planned to give to Derek. She remained hopeful, almost naively so, that Derek would forgive her. Mike, on the other hand, occasionally rolled his eyes at her optimism but refrained from saying anything. When the cruise ended, their luggage was transported to the airport by bus. On the return flight, they sat next to each other in strained silence, barely speaking. At the baggage claim in their hometown, they noticed a man holding a sign with both their names on it. The man gestured toward them, stating he'd been hired to take them home. Once Emma and Mike got into the car, the driver turned around and handed each of them an envelope. You've been served. Emma blinked in surprise. I thought you were just the driver. I am, he replied, unfazed. But I was also paid to deliver these. You should read the letters from your spouses. The driver cleared his throat. I'll be taking you both to 745, Oak Ridge Avenue. That's my house, Mike muttered under his breath. And what about her? My instructions were to take both of you there. The answer might be in the letter. Emma and Mike exchanged wary glances before opening the envelopes, each containing an individual divorce petition. Emma and Mike, we hope you both enjoyed the cruise. Not. If you think this trip was some generous gesture, forget it. I booked these tickets before I discovered your betrayal. They were non-refundable. After Sarah and I met to confirm what you'd both been up to, we agreed on a few things. Infidelity applies equally to both men and women, and while you two seemed fine overlooking that in your vows, we decided to give you this trip to buy ourselves time to get our affairs in order, pun intended. We're sharing a divorce attorney, and that might be a wise choice for you two as well. At the very least, it'll save some money. Receiving this letter starts the 90-day separation period, giving us all time to adjust to being no longer married to our current spouses. To make things easier, Sarah will move in with me, while Emma can move in with Mike. In case you're wondering, Sarah and I haven't pursued a romantic relationship, nor did we feel the need to seek intimacy out of spite. It's not that we don't find each other attractive, we just believe it's inappropriate to involve anyone else until we're officially divorced. Funny concept, right? Not being intimate with anyone but your spouse, seems like I've heard it somewhere before. Ah, yes. Our marriage vows. Or was it merely a suggestion for you two? These next 90 days of separation will be used to negotiate the division of assets. Sarah has already taken everything she wanted from her house, most of which is now in storage. Emma, all your things have been packed and are waiting at Mike's house. Oh, and just so you know, we didn't leave the wedding photos or albums for either of you. Those have been discarded. If you want them, you're welcome to search through the city dump. You both destroyed our marriages, so it seemed only fair to get rid of any sentimental remnants. Clearly, marriage didn't hold the same meaning for you as it did for us. Please, spare us any excuses from the cheater's playbook. There is nothing to justify what you both did, especially with such recklessness. Forget about counseling, at least, marriage counseling, unless you think it might help you two in whatever future marriage you envision together. But here's something for you to think about: can a cheater who marries another cheater ever really trust their spouse? We know we couldn't. So, we don't need marriage counseling. What we really need is to discuss dividing the assets. Our petitions are straightforward, a 50-50 split, though Sarah has a prenuptial agreement that doesn't leave you with much, Mike. I know it doesn't seem entirely fair for Emma to get half after her betrayal, but I'm realistic enough to expect that in court. Still, there should be consequences for both of you. Otherwise, you might go through life thinking you can get away with things like this, whether you stay together or end up with someone else in the future. Sarah and I spent hours debating what consequences might feel appropriate for the two of you. By the way, Mike, that bottle of 20-year-old bourbon you've been saving? Excellent. Too bad it's now empty. Sarah came up with some rather creative ideas, although, unfortunately, most of them were illegal. Here's where we landed. Copies of photos, videos, and other records showing you two in compromising situations will be shared with everyone we can think of, our families, colleagues, community groups, neighbors, and anyone else we remember. I hope this has gotten your attention. What we're aiming for is to speed up the divorce process. Some might see this as a threat or blackmail, we consider it motivation. We also considered filing a lawsuit against the company where you both work. Unfortunately for us, they don't have a strict policy against fraternization, and without proof that your meetings took place on company time, there's no legal grounds for it. Too bad, we could have used the extra cash. Looks like you dodged that bullet. All future communication should go through our attorneys. Both of us now have new phone numbers known only to our lawyers, whose contact information is provided below. We suggest 1 or 2 meetings to settle any outstanding issues. Matters like insurance, real estate, loans, mortgages, and alimony could be resolved through trade-offs rather than a strict 50-50 split. These sessions are solely for asset division. We're not looking for apologies, explanations, requests for forgiveness, or unsolicited advice. Emma's hands trembled as she finished reading. She could feel the tears forming, the loss of her husband and the future she had envisioned pressing heavily on her heart. Mike tried to offer some form of comfort, but his own sense of despair was evident as they arrived at his house. The living room was packed with boxes of Emma's belongings, while all traces of Sarah, her photos, decorations, and most of her things, were gone. For the first time, the reality hit him: his wife was gone, and he was left with someone he barely knew beyond a superficial connection. Emma took a deep breath, gathered some essentials and a few changes of clothes, then asked, "Where's the guest bedroom?" "The guest bedroom?" Mike smirked. "Sweetheart, if you're staying here, then we'll be sharing a bed, and I don't just mean for sleeping." Emma shot him a glare. "I'm about to lose everything in this divorce. Sarah's father made me sign a prenuptial agreement. Caught cheating, I walk away with nothing. It's your fault I got caught, so you owe me more than you think." Mike's face hardened. "My fault? Why are you blaming me? For all we know, it was you who slipped up. We both thought we were being careful. I have no idea how they found out, do you? I just know I was discreet, but that doesn't change anything. Look, either you're in my bed, or you're out that door." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "I choose the door." She grabbed a few more things and stormed out to her car, which Derek had at least been considerate enough to drop off at Mike's house. "And what do you plan to do with the rest of my stuff?" she asked, turning back. "I'll give you 72 hours to get everything. Not a minute more." "Fine." Emma paused, then softened slightly. "I regret the role I played in damaging both of our marriages. Good luck with your divorce." After checking into a motel for the night, Emma spent a restless few hours trying to sleep before heading to work the next day. She looked forward to the routine, hoping it would distract her from everything, but it didn't last long. At work, she crossed paths with her best friend, Lisa, who already knew about the cruise after Derek had arranged for Emma to take time off, telling her colleagues it was a chance for them to reconnect and discuss starting a family. "Emma, you don't look very tanned," Lisa joked with a wink. "Guess you and Derek were too busy in the cabin working on that baby plan." Instead of the expected laughter, Emma's face crumpled, and she broke down into tears. She rushed into her office, and Lisa followed closely behind. Emma shared everything with her friend Lisa, the story of the cruise, the letter, and the divorce papers. Soon, both women were wiping away tears. "Derek and Sarah, well, Sarah, at least, is probably back by now," Lisa said gently. "How are you feeling about all this?" "Awful and, strangely relieved," Emma admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "Ending my marriage feels devastating, but I'm glad we didn't let them walk away without consequences. It's like our marriages meant nothing to them. I feel like I've been deceived all these years." Lisa gave a sympathetic nod. "Well, it's probably not as long as you think. From what we know, they've only been seeing each other for a few months. Derek, do you really think their urge to cheat just popped up a few months ago?" Emma asked, her voice turning bitter. "I feel like their undying love started fading right after the honeymoon. What else would explain why they'd decide to betray us like this?" "I get it," Lisa replied with a sigh. "I still can't understand why she did it. I always thought Sarah was devoted, ready to have a family with me. Thank goodness I found out before we had kids. Divorce would be a nightmare if children were involved." "Do you think Mike will contest the divorce?" "With the prenuptial agreement in place, he probably will. Otherwise, he'll leave with nearly nothing. He barely brought in $10,000 when we got married. Do you think those photos of them sneaking in and out of that motel are enough to prove infidelity? Part of me wishes we had a video. On the other hand, seeing a video would scar me for life." Lisa frowned. "Those photos alone might not hold up. I'd probably need Emma's testimony to make it a sure thing." Emma bit her lip, hesitant. "I don't know. It sounds weird, but aside from the affair, Emma holds herself to a pretty high standard. I mean, she cheated, yes, but she might still tell the truth about it if confronted. Would you be able to talk to her for me?" "Maybe. Let's play it by ear for now. You handle your divorce, and I'll focus on mine. There's no rush as far as I can tell." Lisa smiled softly. And by the way, how long do you think you'll put up with me hanging around before you toss me out? As far as I'm concerned, you're welcome here as long as you like. Honestly, I've been surprised by how comfortable it's been having you here, and we've settled into a routine pretty quickly. I've really valued having you to talk to, and the mutual support has been a lifesaver. Derek paused, a hint of a grin forming. And for the record, I'd say you don't have a scrawny backside. Lisa laughed, relieved. Thank goodness you noticed. Now I won't have to sneak testosterone into your breakfast to get a reaction out of you. Sometimes, I just need a little assurance that I'm still attractive. Oh, I've noticed, believe me, Derek chuckled. But by all means, don't stop trying. They shared a warm smile. Over a month passed before Derek and Emma arranged to meet. Since Mike hadn't seen any actual photos, he contested the accusation of infidelity, which only served to delay Sarah's divorce. Each lawyer came armed with a list of negotiation points, and Emma's attorney was given the chance to present her requests first. My client requests that all joint checking and savings accounts be divided equally between herself and her husband, Emma's attorney began. She wishes to retain her car and assume the loan, with his name removed from the title. In return, she agrees to have her name removed from his vehicle's title, and he will take on that loan. Both parties will secure their own auto insurance. Regarding the house, she proposes either selling it and splitting the equity or allowing him to buy her out by paying half the assessed equity, as determined by a certified real estate appraiser. She will, of course, be removed from the deed if he chooses to retain ownership. Derek's attorney replied, "We have no issue with these terms. Her husband has decided to sell the house. He'll put it on the market within 90 days. Is there anything else she wants?" Emma's attorney stepped in, "My client agrees to these terms on the condition that your client speaks with her privately for 1 hour." "No," Derek responded curtly. "Then my client requests 12 counseling sessions. If your client refuses, we'll file for $3,000 per month in spousal support and a claim on the home's equity. You know we could win both in court with the right judge." Derek's lawyer leaned over and whispered, explaining that local judges often favor ordering counseling and permitting the wife to stay in the home. While she likely wouldn't secure the full $3,000 per month and exclusive rights to the house, she could still end up with far more than he was currently offering. Derek's lawyer advised him to accept the 1-hour meeting and be grateful there weren't harsher demands. "Fine. My client will agree to speak with his wife for 1 hour, provided she signs an agreement beforehand," Derek's lawyer concluded. "Derek, will you actually talk with me rather than just sitting in silence?" Emma asked, her voice calm yet tinged with tension. Derek's irritation was evident, but he conceded. "Fine, Emma. I'll listen." When they were alone, Derek looked at her, setting a timer on his watch. "We're done at exactly 3:32. "I deserve that," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "You promise to listen." Derek nodded, his posture rigid, waiting for her to speak. "Derek, I've wronged you, and I've sinned against everything I believed in. I won't make excuses. I let myself think that it was okay, convincing myself it was justified. I lied, to myself, to you, even to God. I broke my vows. I betrayed the person I love most in this world. I deserve the consequences. I think you'd agree with everything I've just admitted." Derek nodded again, his face unreadable. "The question now," Emma continued, "is about punishment. Is divorce too severe a punishment? Is a second chance out of the question? Imagine a scale of justice for divorce. Place the weight of my betrayal on the negative side. It makes that side sink down. Is there anything else you'd add to that side? Were there other reasons why I failed as your wife, besides the affair? Was I ever disrespectful to you, to our marriage? Did anyone ever come to you with complaints about my behavior or tell you I was speaking poorly of you? Did I ever deny you intimacy, even during the time I was unfaithful? Did you ever doubt my love for you before you discovered what I did with Mike? Derek shook his head, still unwilling to respond verbally. Emma took a shaky breath. Can you think of anything about me that might tip the scale back, a reason to consider a second chance? She asked, her voice breaking slightly. Do you believe I was deceitful when you married me? Derek exhaled slowly, then finally replied, no. You were the most perfect person I'd ever known, his voice taut with emotion. That's why your betrayal cut so deep. What did I do to make you turn away from me? His voice trembled, and he struggled to hold back tears. Derek, it wasn't you, Emma replied gently. You were everything I needed. The problem was within me. I convinced myself I wanted more and that I deserved it. And our family life? Did I do something wrong? Derek, you were more than just my husband, you were my best friend. I loved hearing about your day when I came home, and you seemed genuinely interested in hearing about mine. I felt guilty for spending so much of our money on myself while you rarely asked for anything. I enjoyed our political debates, even though you were almost always wrong. A small smile crept onto her face, and Derek's lips twitched in response. I loved our talks about having kids and planning our future. I never doubted you, even when I was away for work, Derek said, his voice wavering. I thought we were so in love, or at least I did. He took a shaky breath. You keep saying this is all your fault, but I can't help wondering if I took you for granted or did something that made you turn to Mike. His voice cracked, and tears welled up in his eyes. He quickly brushed them away. Emma looked at him with desperation. Think of the scales, Derek. Are they anywhere near balanced? Is there even a trace of love in your heart for me that could tip them toward a second chance? She reached out, her hand trembling slightly. I know it's hard to believe any promises I make after betraying you, but I swear, with every bit of my soul, that I'll never do this again. Please, Derek. Just one more chance. Derek closed his eyes, feeling his head throb as he weighed his options. Finally, he opened them and spoke. Emma, it'll take me time to erase the image of you and Mike in that motel room from my mind. I'll agree to hold off on the divorce papers we just signed, on one condition. Anything, she replied, her voice raw and filled with hope. If you're willing to testify against Mike in Alyssa's divorce. Emma's face went pale. What would I have to testify about? Mike is challenging the photos of you two leaving the motel room as proof of infidelity. Legally, he may be able to argue his way out of it. You testify that you and he did have a physical relationship. So, you lied about having a video of us together? Derek looked away. It's not something I could prove, anyway. Emma swallowed hard. I don't mind telling the truth. Yes, we were intimate in that motel room. I regret risking 2 marriages, but I won't lie to save Mike from the consequences. He's not worth that. Both of us deserve whatever comes our way. I just hope it doesn't have to mean losing you. Thank you. I'll let my attorney know. Emma took a breath and asked, Derek, what does this mean for us? Could I come back to the house? Alyssa is staying there for now. You'll need to wait. I won't ask her to leave until she's found another place to stay. And I did promise to put the house up for sale. If the divorce is postponed, you wouldn't need to sell. I'd be willing to wait until Alyssa moves out, and we could use this time to reconnect. Maybe we should date each other again, get to know the people we are now. We're both different. With time and grace, maybe we could find our way back to each other, build a life together, and create the family we once dreamed of. I'm not sure I'm ready to dive into that dream again, Derek said, giving a slight smile, but I'd like to see where it leads. I like that idea, Emma replied, her smile widening. I'll let Alyssa know. Alyssa wasn't as thrilled about the news as Derek expected, but she managed a smile and said, thank you. When Mike heard that Emma was willing to testify about their time together at the motel, he surrendered. He was shocked when Alyssa agreed to pay off his car loan and credit card debt as compensation for losing his share of the equity in their home. Given the housing market, selling would barely cover the mortgage and realtor fees. Spousal support wasn't part of the prenuptial agreement. Derek couldn't help but be surprised by Alyssa's unexpected generosity and eventually asked her about it. "I wanted nothing more than to burn that man to the ground," Alyssa admitted, her voice steady. "He hurt me more deeply than I thought possible. But then I looked at you, and I saw how you were able to forgive Emma's betrayal without seeking revenge. That perspective changed something in me. I realized that, despite his mistakes, there were good parts of my marriage with Mike before everything went wrong. My dad thinks I'm crazy, but honestly, I feel lighter after the divorce than I ever would have if I'd gone after him. Thank you, Derek, for showing me that forgiveness doesn't have to be weak." She hugged him tightly and, to his surprise, leaned in for a passionate kiss. Derek felt his heart race as the kiss warmed him, challenging his long-held belief that Kara was someone he could never see romantically. "Kara, that was. I'm sorry, Derek," she said softly, "but you mean so much to me. Sometimes it's been hard not to show you how deeply I care. I just hope you can forgive me." "Forgive you?" He chuckled, his emotions bubbling to the surface. "Honestly, I wanted to rip your clothes off and make love to you. That's the most alive I've felt in ages. You sure know how to kiss. So, would you want to do that again?" "More than anything," she smiled, her eyes warm. "But there's one problem. I'm still trying to figure out if I can give Emma a second chance." "How can I do that if we're involved?" "Well," she said thoughtfully, "first of all, if we start seeing each other, it wouldn't be an affair. We're both legally free now. And second, who says you can't give me a first chance while giving Emma a second?" Derek's logic and emotions wrestled fiercely. "I need some time to sort through all this," he said finally. "I'm going to bed alone and see if I can get some sleep." He walked away, his thoughts in a whirl, still feeling unsettled. A soft knock on his open door made him turn. Kara stood there, wrapped in a thin nightgown that looked almost translucent in the dim light of the hallway. "Derek," she whispered, "would it be all right if I slept next to you tonight? I can't sleep. I promise I'll behave." Though he knew it wasn't the wisest choice, he relented. "All right, if you promise." She slipped into bed beside him, her hand resting on his chest, her leg draping across his. She kissed his cheek softly. "Thank you." It took Derek a long time to fall asleep. When he did, his sleep was fitful, filled with vivid dreams. In one, he found himself at a serene beach with Emma, lounging beneath a palm tree with tropical drinks in hand. She looked at him with warmth, inching closer, a familiar spark in her eyes. Derek drifted in and out of sleep, only to open his eyes to Kara's playful smile beside him. "Weren't you going to behave?" he murmured, caught between surprise and a strange sense of contentment. "Are you saying it wasn't good?" she teased, a laugh dancing in her eyes. "Maybe I need to try a little harder." Derek stood, suddenly feeling the need for some fresh air. I'm not sure this is fair to Emma." Kara's smile softened. "Haven't you heard? All's fair in love and war." He managed a faint smile. "I feel like I should thank you," he admitted. "It's been a long time since I've felt close to someone. Maybe that's a sign of what's possible." "Derek," Kara continued, her tone thoughtful, "we'll be living together, at least for a while. Why not see if we're compatible in more ways than one?" As for Mike, he had come to terms with the situation and withdrew completely. He accepted the divorce terms, and there was no further contact. Derek, meanwhile, found himself reconnecting with Emma. He enjoyed spending time with her and began to recall the things that had once drawn him to her. Emma wasn't pushy, instead, she seemed devoted to rebuilding his trust, doing whatever she could to earn it. Yet Kara hadn't moved out, even after Mike had left the house they had shared for years. One evening, Derek and Kara sat together, and he realized he had something important to say. "Kara, I'm grateful. I have this smart, kind woman in my life who's brought me more happiness than I thought I'd ever feel again," he began, taking a deep breath. "And I've started reconnecting with someone who was the love of my life for years. Trusting her isn't easy after everything, but I've started to feel enough for her that I wonder if I'm being unfair to you by having you here, especially with the bond we've developed. Maybe you'd consider moving back to your place." Kara's face turned serious as she shook her head. "I'm not moving back to my old place because, as far as I'm concerned, this is my home. I want to be with you, Derek. Wherever we are together, that's home to me. If you think I have an unfair advantage by staying here, then I'll take it. I'm fighting for the man I love. I just don't understand why you'd want a woman who betrayed you when you have someone who never has and never will." Derek looked down, his thoughts tangled. "I don't want to undermine your sense of fairness," she added softly. "If that's what you need, I'll move out, even though I hate the idea. But remember, Derek, I'm not giving up on you. I'll keep fighting to win your love no matter where I live. I trust your judgment, and though you haven't said it, I believe you love me." He sighed, feeling the weight of her words. Kara's devotion moved him, and he knew her feelings were sincere. "I need some time to sort things out." She gave him a sad smile. "I'll wait, Derek. But I still hope for a future where we're married and have a family together." Eventually, Kara moved out, leaving Derek more alone than he had anticipated. He found himself missing her warmth, her laughter, and the comfort of her presence. Months passed, and Emma began to feel hopeful after hearing that Kara had moved out. Still, she was disappointed that Derek never came to visit her at their old home. When they did meet, they hugged and exchanged a few affectionate gestures, but there was a lack of real intimacy. Emma clung to memories of their past, hoping Derek felt the same. They spent time reminiscing about the early days of their relationship, but her affair remained a lingering shadow that neither dared to address directly. Before their next scheduled meeting, there was a 2-week pause. Emma felt a renewed sense of optimism, convinced that Derek was finally going to make a decision. She entered the conference room with cautious hope, only to see that Kara was also present. Emma's heart sank, but she kept her composure, sitting quietly as she tried to hold back tears. Derek began, his voice steady but somber. "Emma, I wanted both of you here because I find myself constantly torn between you both, emotionally and mentally. It's not fair to either of you, and it doesn't feel right to me either." He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Emma, I've made a decision. I've come to terms with the past, and I've managed to forgive you. Spending time with you brought back memories of why I fell in love with you and how strong our marriage once was. Part of me wanted to try and rebuild what we had, under certain conditions, of course. But I can't forget. While I could take a personal risk in staying with you, I can't risk an uncertain future with the mother of my children. Imagining the effect this would have on them makes it an even heavier choice." He glanced at Kara, then looked back at Emma. "In fact, I made this decision a few months ago. Since then, I've been working on a new divorce agreement. Given the years we shared, I want to ensure that you have the means to support yourself and move forward. I have no doubt you'll find someone willing to give you that fresh start and maybe even start a family." Handing her an envelope, he continued, "These are the new settlement terms, and they're more generous than what was initially proposed. I sincerely wish you the best, Emma. I truly do." Kara and Derek stood to leave. "Derek, can't you?" Emma's voice trailed off as her gaze fell on Kara, noticing a slight curve in her stomach. In that moment, she knew the life she had dreamed of rekindling with Derek was beyond her reach.